Hello,
Hello.
this is Fam Electric Ghost, and we have the living
Yes,
on.
this is just Derek from the Living.
Okay, great. So Derek
Yep.
Barnes. Yeah, I was reading you're from the Bay Area, from San Francisco,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so you're kind of a progressive rock band, but you have kind of a new romantic edge. You have a sound. I was listening to a song on one of your albums. I think it was like your first EP, Hot Breath, and it kind of reminded me of Joy Division a little
Yeah.
bit.
It's. Are we? Sorry. Are we on right now? Are we recording?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're on. Yeah, but we're recording. It's not live, but
Gotcha.
we're on.
Yeah. It's funny. More than a few people have kind of made that comparison, especially to the like whole new romantic thing, and that's cool. But it's funny because none of us really listen to that music. So
Well, sometimes you find as a musician you're doing something, and then people think you're using it as a reference point. You just found the same thing that those guys found.
It's interesting. It's interesting the comparisons that you get. I mean, with us, we're kind of we're kind of all over the place in the comparisons that we get. So it's
Yeah.
every show we play, we get a different reference, and it's always a little like, oh, really? You hear that? Oh, okay.
Well, I like that you're an actual band actually playing music, as opposed to I'm an electronic musician, so I don't want to come down on a lot of the music that's out there today. But there's so many people using CDJs and using Ableton Live and just recording in their bedroom, and that's fine. But it's cool to actually see a real like rock band.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think we're just too dumb to figure out electronic music, anyways. So.
Well, I'm kind of a purist. I go back to electronic music, and I'm like Emerson,
Oh
Lake and
yeah, yeah,
Palmer. Like
yeah. Oh,
Yes, Wakeman. My idea of an electronic musician is a guy on a Moog or a
oh,
Prophet or big modular actually
well,
playing still. So
switch it in with us then, because yeah, we like a lot of that old stuff. Our bass player Jeremy, he is a Yes like fanatic, so we're
yeah,
definitely into a lot of that
it's
old kind of progressive rock.
yeah, definitely. So I was just reading from your description on Spotify, and you do get compared to like metal, and then new romantic. So you've got progressive rock. People from different magazines have mentioned that you're kind of progressive rock based, and you're heavy metal and you new romantic. So it's kind of cool. You are all over the map on that, which is good. I think a band having a lot of different reference points, I think it will increase their longevity in the business, just because you got a lot of different ways you can go.
Yeah, I think in the in the long run, it will help out. It's a little difficult right now, like the when we try to describe our music to people, because it is kind of all over the place. You know,
In a good way. That's a good thing.
sometimes, yeah. I mean, sometimes when you try to like pitch yourself to a venue or to whatever,
Oh, yeah.
they're kind of they want to know
They want
exactly
to
what
pitch.
you
Yeah, they
sound like.
want to know exactly. Yeah, they want to know exactly what you
Yeah,
are. You
yeah,
know, which is kind
yeah.
of
It
hard.
hasn't been a
You know.
huge problem, but and we definitely like that we're kind of a little bit all over the place and have a varied sound and very dynamic. And to be honest, that's one of the biggest kind of compliments that we get, is that we're pretty dynamic. But
But I think you kind of fall into a progressive rock vein.
yeah,
I would put you in that vein, because progressive rock means you can kind of go
yeah,
anywhere.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, we like a lot of that stuff. I don't know how progressive we are, but yeah, that's
Well, I mean, maybe you don't break out into like the way Yes breaks into
oh
multiple, little overtures and kind of doing rock
no,
operas.
yeah,
Maybe you don't do that, but you have some aspects because of your genre
yeah.
shifting that maybe seem to imply it. That's how I
Right,
pick it up.
right. Yeah. I mean that's that is one of the genres that we're all kind of, we're all into. We all like that older kind of 70s progressive rock, stuff like Genesis and
Yeah, Peter Gabriel
Gabriel,
Genesis.
uh, King Crimson, all that stuff. We're definitely huge into that. It doesn't necessarily come through as much in the songwriting, but we're all fans of that stuff.
Mhm. I can kind of pick it up, but yeah. So maybe I go through the standard
Yeah.
questions. that I usually go through. Is like, so when did you first get into music? Like what age?
Me personally, man, I can't remember a time when I wasn't into it. My first real vivid memory of being like totally obsessed with something was I was going to visit my grandmother. My mom was taking me, and along the way, we stopped at a record store for some reason, and I saw this Elvis record. And for some reason, I was just really attracted to it. Maybe I had like a man crush on Elvis, but my mom bought it for me, and I went home and like she put it on, and she plugged in a microphone so I could like sing along to it, and I was just like hooked on that for the longest time. And then it just kind of like went downhill from there.
Yeah, I think it, like, musicians always kind of, when I ask them, like, they usually have a reference point, what was, a lot of people lately have been like indicating that
Yeah,
Bowie was what is like, he's like the new Beatle. Because everybody, when I was growing up, all the bands say that they were inspired by
right.
the Beatles. And now everybody, after Bowie passed, everybody's saying they're inspired by Bowie. Man, that's kind of true in this generation. I think there's a lot of people that pick up what he was doing.
Right. And so, I mean, and he was around for, he was putting out music just a lot longer than the Beatles were. So,
Yeah, just in so many phases. Because I think what he brings to the table is the theatrical
right,
stuff, and in the age of videos and film and the internet, his kind of presentation of all these different characters and being able to play Ziggy, Aladdin, saying all those things. I think a lot of people kind of pick up on that the same way they pick up on like Freddie
right.
Mercury, and it's just there's a lot of I hear that a lot about
Yeah.
Queen and David Bowie. I'm kind of go back to like Velvet Underground.
And there's only, and there's only a few people that can really, not everyone can be David Bowie. There's only a few people that have that kind of like personality that can really, be successful with doing all those different types of characters and, that whole.
Yeah. Well, I think like the Lou Reed was a big influence for me growing up because I kind of grew up in an alternative era where you had like all the college radio bands like REM
Right,
and the Replacements and Who's to Do. Everybody said, oh, like the Velvet Underground was the big influence.
right, right.
And that kind of made it so, okay, yeah, we can do this. It's kind of like that punk aesthetic.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
Velvets and Lou Reed kind of brought this idea like if you have some ideas, you don't have to be the most perfect player
Right,
in the world, but you can still have that punk aesthetic and kind of bring that to the table.
right. Yeah, I got into him just before he passed, and I actually had tickets to go see him, but he had pulled out of this concert because he was sick. I wish I would have gotten to see him.
Yeah, the Velvets were a big thing for me when I grew up. My all my garage bands, we were like trying to do the first Velvet Underground record over and over.
That is a beautiful album. That first
Oh,
round.
oh yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's like I think it's a really good thing for a band to like start from there.
Yeah,
Kind of like Dylan-esque.
yeah,
It's kind of lo-fi. It kind of gets into like, okay, let's really get of trying to say
right.
something. But yeah. So how you've been working on music ever since you got that Elvis record? Did you start to realize that you were going to get an instrument and start like writing your own
Yeah, I mean,
music?
I wouldn't say I started music then. I mean, I was probably like 7 years old or something when I saw that Elvis album. But I was huge into music after that. It started like with Elvis, and then my parents and my whole extended family grew up with the Beatles, like you mentioned, and so that was definitely something that I listened to a lot growing up. And then I got super into metal. My brother at the time was, a big metalhead, so he kind of like introduced me to a lot of different bands. And from there, that was like sixth or seventh grade, and that's when I really wanted to get a guitar, but my parents just were not having that at all. Uh, they were just, very against me having a guitar. I don't know if they thought I was gonna, just turn into that cliche kind of like, yeah.
Rocker. He had that rocker and like
Yeah, so
reputation.
it wasn't until I was a senior in high school that I got a guitar, and I had to save up my own money. I had to do like odd jobs. I saved up, birthday money and that kind of thing, and then I just went out and I bought my own guitar, and then I got the permission from my parents. My dad was like, as long as you get your homework done, and as long as you like put your headphones into your amp when I get home, because I want to hear that shit. You can do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So it wasn't until I was like a senior in high school that I started playing guitar. But I'm kind of glad that I that I got it later on as opposed to all my friends, because a lot of my friends that got guitars like in middle school or early high school, they kind of quit after a year or two. I always
Yeah, you kind of got to have that,
yeah
that
felt like I was
drive.
behind because so many of my friends were just, or people that I knew were just really good guitar players. So I was like, shit, I'm so far behind. I have to like learn how to play this or that song. So it kind of just made me work harder at it.
And then you started to find, like-minded folks to kind of build your bands. Like, were you in a lot of bands before you got to
No,
this
not
one?
at all. I was. This is basically the first and only band I've ever been in. I've jammed with other people, but I always kind of just wrote by myself, and then it was I think it was almost 10 years ago actually that I met a really good friend named Aryan, who lives in Southern California, and he and I met Craigslist, and we would just jam together at his school campus. They had like a little jam room, so he and I would play together, and we just started writing songs together. We didn't have a drummer, so we had to find a drummer and that whole thing. So the kind of like early stage of the living was me and this guy Aryan, and then we met a drummer named Ben, and this was all in Southern California, and it wasn't super serious. We would meet up once a week and kind of jam, and we'd play like little keg parties and that kind of thing. But then when I moved back up to San Francisco, that's kind of when things got pretty serious, and I, kind of recruited some friends to play with me, and yeah, it's been that way ever since.
Wow, so you got Julian
Yeah,
in there now?
yeah, Julian, I've known, a long, long time. I've known him, well, I mean, at least long compared to how long I've been alive. I've
Mhm.
known him, I think, like 20 years or something like that. But we started playing together about, I think in March, it'll be 4 years that me, Julian, Jason, and Jeremy have been playing together. So,
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's cool
So,
because we're all, local Bay Area guys. We're all friends. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
yeah, 'cause I really like your sound on your first two EPs from
Mhm.
2017 and 2018. I was looking at, Drinking from the
Yeah,
Trough in the Living, the self-titled one. And yeah, you've really got some really good sounds and synergy in your band. I like the way your group sounds. I think it's a really good breath of fresh air. I kind of grew up in the college radio
yeah,
era, listening to the Replacements and Husker Du and
right,
bands that were really guitar
right,
focused bands. Um, and some of them had like a new wave, new romantic edge, like like Joy
hmm,
Division. They would integrate some of that Joy Division kind of Cure sound or the sound of the Smiths and
right,
stuff like that. But I always had this kind of love of like metal and punk, and like the Who is a big band for me. I'm a big Who fan,
definitely.
so I always liked Townsend and Entwistle and the way they with Moon, how they could pull that together.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and Wessel, he was a crazy good bass player, right?
where you like
Yeah,
lead
yeah,
bass, because like if you think about it, like Townsend had really interesting chord
yeah,
choices, but then Entwistle and Moon are soloing through the
yeah,
whole song. Every Who song they're soloing, and Pete kind of keeps it together with
yeah.
his chords,
And then
and that's like a different structure than most rock
right,
bands.
and yeah, Roger Daltrey just has that like insanely powerful voice.
Yeah, I've listened to Pete's
Yeah.
demos, and they're really good. They're like singer
Mhm.
songwriter good, but when Daltrey sings the same thing, he just increases the power.
Right,
Unbelievable.
right.
But it's still cool to hear Pete's versions because Pete's a pretty cool singer in his own way, but Daltrey just
Yeah,
belts it out.
yeah, definitely. That's how I would describe him, a belter for sure.
Yeah, but I'm a big fan. I saw the Who a couple times. I see the Almonds. I'm a big fan of like progressive rock, jam band rock,
Uh,
you know, bands like Cream and stuff. But yeah, but I'm an electronic musician myself, so there's a lot of stuff going on today when people are using DAWs and stuff. So when you record, how are you guys recording your albums? Are you doing it like in your own home studio or going to a professional studio?
We work with someone. Like I said, we are not very smart when it comes to at least I'm not when it comes to technology and like home recording and that sort of thing. I've got a very primitive setup at my house, but the way that we kind of write is for the most part we just get into a room and we just start kind of jamming on ideas. So it's a very kind of like organic, kind of old school approach. And then we work with a gentleman named Jack Shirley who runs a studio in Oakland called the Atomic Garden, and he's kind of like a I don't know, like a Bay Area, not icon. That's a little too, but he's kind of like a stalwart of the Bay Area. So many bands have worked with him, punk, metal, all different kinds of bands have worked with him, and he's just got a really good reputation for making really solid live sounding records. So we've been.
So is he using like analog,
He runs
sound?
tape, I think, on pretty much everything, except I don't think we did vocals. I think we did vocals digitally, but
that's awesome. Because I mean, I Sound City, and like using analog recording equipment for a rock band is a very good thing to do, and also like analog synths. You really should use analog recording, and it's cool to see a band like you doing it the old way, because I grew up, playing in the basement using a Tascam 4-track and biking it. That's kind of the old school before DAWs came along, and I reject kind of DAWs. I use like Zoom digital recorders and 1/4-inch lines, and mic stuff, and put it directly into the instruments. And I think sometimes you get this sound that's a lot more organic, like you said. If you have these organic jam sessions and you pull songs out of them, it's kind of like the classic way of recording.
Right, and he kind of really tries to drive home the fact that not everything has to sound perfect.
I think that's
if there's a little mistake here and there, that kind of like enhances the the human sound of the album.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and listen to Derek and the Dominoes, it's not perfect. If you go listen to All Cream, it's not perfect. It's awesome, but people today spend so much time trying to make things perfect, and keeping the key changes according to what the computer says. And I'm more of a jazz guy. Like sometimes you want to go like in a Coltrane direction, and your computer would tell you not to do that. If you're using a DAW, it would tell you not to do what Coltrane's doing. It would tell you not to do what Hendrix did. And I don't think the musicians, I think, like that you're on the right path, because I think people who let the computer tell them to be like perfect, you kind of pull all the originality out of things sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that, you hear a lot of that nowadays. Everything just sounds so pristine to where it kind of sounds, what's the word? It kind of sounds like
too mechanical.
It sounds like there's just no.
If you have a mix that's too perfect, I mean, if I have Moogs, and sometimes I want my Moogs to sound dirty, I want them to sound heavy. I don't want them to sound perfect pitch or clean, pristine. I want you to hear that kind of loading circuit. and if you go and let your computer tell you not to do that, then you won't hear that. So I think, and they got this punk aesthetic, going back to the Clash or the Replacements or Rooster Do.
That goes
and
the vocals too. Sometimes it's like, even if you go a little off key in the vocals, but you're really like, like you really got some soul behind it or something. That's I don't know, I like.
Yeah, we listen to Joe Strummer. Like, would Joe Strummer get picked up by a label now? Maybe not.
Probably
maybe not. But there's something about the way Strummer sang it. It's not perfect pitch. It's off key. He goes off a lot, but it's the authentic kind of punk aesthetic of the Clash. You can't like have a perfect pitch singer on that, or like a Paul Westerberg or Bob Mould. You're not going to get, what you hear on American Idol. From guys like that. That's not what they're doing. But you shouldn't keep them out of the industry.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's cool. So I'm glad, because I've talked to a lot of musicians that, they've never even played an instrument. Um, and they're musicians in a new way. They've been on these DAWs and they do construct things, but it's cool to hear people still doing it the old way.
Yeah, it's funny because I've met people who, they show me their home recordings, and it sounds cool. Everything just, but it's kind of like you said, everything just sounds so perfect. And I like, I'll meet these people and I'll talk to them. I'll be like, oh, well, do you ever like play this live? And they're like, no, I can't play this live.
No, they got to go on the
Yeah,
CDJ and run it. And I'm kind of I'll actually bring my Moogs and road cases into New York and play a show in a small club. And people are surprised I don't have a CDJ because they think all electronic
yeah,
musicians use CDJs. And I'm like, I'm using real Moogs in Euro
right.
raps. And I like being kind of jazz oriented in that I might play my song
Mhm.
differently. I'm not going to run it perfectly. I'm not going to run the same thing over and over because it's not fun for me. I rather kind of jam it out. And I think something's getting lost in the generation of people that just want to hear the thing exactly like
Yeah,
on the record. I think it's cool to have a live band interpret, their song and do it a little bit differently,
yeah,
because that's why people go to see Pearl Jam concerts, like five different versions of the same show. They'll go to the same every
right,
night because Eddie does it different every
right.
night.
Yeah, I think there's kind of like it seems like there's kind of a, not a fine line, but it's like you want to preserve the kind of like essence, I guess, of the song, but it's also fun to kind of mess around with it, and you know, if you,
Yeah, I mean that's why people listen to old Hendrix concerts for how many different versions of Hey
yeah,
Joe, how many different versions of Purple Haze, depending on how he
right,
felt,
right,
you know, and it's cool to see that. And it's kind of like the Eagles, not to come down on them, but they used to find each other if they didn't play Hotel California tour exactly as the
jeez,
record.
wow,
They had like a fine system where everybody had to play Hotel California straight through exactly like it was on the
wow.
record. And if they didn't, they got
Because
fined.
we haven't heard Hotel California enough on the radio the way.
Yeah, but they kind of were like doing a CDJ, like live version of a
Yeah,
CDJ. It's like I don't know if that's the best way to get people motivated on a like 6 month tour to make them play
yeah.
the thing exactly the same.
They probably have enough money between them to break that rule, anyways. So
Yeah, well, that was back
yeah,
in the heyday of that band, but I think that was like going the wrong
yeah,
direction. But yeah, so have you been playing like live shows
yeah.
in your
We've been
area?
playing the last. I think our first show with this group of guys was in July of 2015. So this summer, will be 4 years of playing, and yeah, we actually just played a show Monday night. With this band called, well, there were two bands. One band was called Stars at Night, and the other band was called La Butcherettes, and they were the headline band. They're kind of this punk band from Mexico, and they were stopping in San Francisco, and we got asked to play, and it was a sold out show, so that was awesome. Um, so that was a lot of fun, and yeah, we've just been playing over the last couple of years, trying to improve the stage performance, trying to get tighter on stage, trying to put together the ultimate set lists, and make the songs stronger, punchier. It's just it's like anything else. You just have to practice it, and you know just try to
Yeah,
fine tune it as much as you can. But
yeah. For a band like you, practice is a big
yeah,
thing, because when in the age of people just using the CDJs again, not to come down on them, but you don't necessarily have to practice at the level of a band
right.
like you,
And
your
we
band.
we usually
Yeah,
practice about 3 times a week. So yeah,
yeah, I would
yeah,
expect that. Well, that's kind of old school. I mean, a touring active
mhm,
band had to
right,
rehearse. That's kind of back in the day when I was coming up. Every band I knew was playing like 3, 4 times a
mhm,
week. To keep up their
right,
chops, um, and just keep the integration. To make sure they're all kind of
yeah,
in tune. But nowadays, you don't necessarily have to do that with the different types of music that's
right,
out there. Like DJs and the
yeah,
EDM and hip hop
I've gone
people.
to I've gone to see people perform EDM music, and I've been backstage, and I've seen guys, I guess they call themselves producers. They go up to the stage and they'll literally just plug in a you know
Like,
what do you call it, like
SD
yeah, something
card
like
or a
that.
stack
And
stick.
they
Yeah,
really just press play and like twist some. I don't mean
yeah.
to sound like a jaded.
No, no, I kind of go in that same place
Yeah,
you're
but it's
going
like
because,
you see that and you're like, wow, it's just
well, I think then the people see these guys jumping up and
yeah,
down, and the jumping up and
yeah,
down is kind of like that's not being a
yeah.
musician.
I mean,
It's more like being a hype man.
I'm not
Rappers and
like
stuff are
not
hype man.
creating that stuff isn't difficult or doesn't require talent, because it does. You have to know your
Yeah,
technology and everything, but yeah,
but the art
but
of performance,
it's
I think what gets lost is the art of
yeah,
performance.
it seems like it's more about the party.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different crowd. I mean, there's a crowd that wants to see somebody playing like an Eric Clapton or a Jack White or a Hendrix. They want to see the
Yeah,
musicianship, and then there's a crowd that just wants to hear a beat.
right, yeah,
And there's different crowds. You kind of know who your audience. If you're a rock band, people want to see you solo. They want to see the drummer do a drum solo. They want to
yeah,
see that. But the kids today that want to just get into the hype of an EDM
yeah,
show or a hip hop show, they just want to hear the bars. They want to hear
yeah,
the beat. They don't care about the musicianship
yeah,
as much. But I've been trying to get like people to think there should be a hybrid of like a DJ that actually brings like a Euro rack on stage
yeah,
and does like a Keith Emerson with his beats. Actually
yeah,
play, show that you can actually do what Dead Mouse does all his stuff on Euro
yeah,
racks. And sometimes he actually has them on stage. And I think you should try to integrate live performance as much as possible, because one of the things about electronic music, when Moog created the Moog, he said they should be played
yeah.
live. And so anybody who's into electronic music should kind of remember Bob Moog and not just push the
Right.
button.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
there has to be someone out there doing that.
oh, there are, like in Europe, you'll see a lot of them. There's a lot of Euro rack based electronic musicians who are using Moogs and Prophets and very advanced electronic composition. It's not just a
Yeah,
CDJ. They're using, they're actively
right.
playing, and they're letting their analog synths kind of
Yeah,
talk, kind of like Keith Emerson used to, or Wakeman. They're coming at it
yeah,
like that, like
right.
Genesis. And so not to put down other people, because that's a
Yeah,
different
yeah,
vibe. I mean, it's a progressive electronic versus
right.
EDM. And it's a different audience that's going to be
Yep.
into that. But I think there's always room to merge, and it kind of gets into. Have you thought of like collaborating outside your lane with like a jazz or a rap or hip hop or EDM artist?
We've talked about collaborating with other bands that are somewhat in our genre, but we haven't really talked about doing something outside of. But I would be open to that. I think that's just the four of us in this band. We're all fans of pretty much every kind of style. So that would be something that would be pretty interesting to do. We haven't
Yeah.
like seriously talked about that, but that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because I mean, they bring in like 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 electronic musician that's heavy Euro
Yeah,
rack or modular synth, like a Wakeman type of
yeah,
person, and add that, then you probably get really
right.
progressive.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of toyed around with a few synths and some a little some keys on the last recording we did, but nothing too intensive. But I think that's kind of a direction we want to explore a little bit more going forward. You know,
Yeah, a little Abacab here and there, a little Lamb Lies
yeah,
Down on Broadway.
yeah. I mean, not sure if that'll stick, but I think that's something that we want to, at least try to mess around with in the future.
Or even like a Trent
Yeah,
Reznor kind of Nine Inch Nails industrial
yeah.
synth
I
that has the kind of hard edge. You can kind of, it's metal kind of
right.
esque.
Yeah, no, I love Nine Inch Nails. I've been a fan since like the Fragile came out. So I would love to.
Yeah, and that's all Moog. That's all like mini
Yeah,
Moog. running through all kinds of filters and pedals, but that shows you the power that a mode can have. It can be very upfront. You can have them just like screaming like guitars. And I've always been a big proponent of trying to get analog synths to be out there in front like guitars, in a kind of a punk way, like what Trent was doing. And there's people in Europe are doing that, like Denmark and the Netherlands, and there's a lot of movement in that type of progressive electronic, which I think does kind of link with like heavy metal and punk rockers. And I think that kind of integration I love to see. I see it, bands like Wilco and Radiohead and Magua sometimes pull that in.
Yeah, with Radiohead, it seems like it's a bit more lush sounding.
Yeah, they do a lot of real experimental stuff with their synths, but they use a lot of it's like heavy synth stuff, but it's all kind of lush, kind of atmospheric.
Right.
But it's not as hard edged as what Trent does.
Yeah.
But it's still
two very
cool.
different animals. But they both make incredible music.
So what are your thoughts on like the future of music and like your specific style? I hear people all the time saying like rock is dead, like traditional rock, like top 40 rock is dead. But I still see rock all over the net if you look for it, like a lot of indie bands like yourselves. So what are your thoughts about that?
I don't know. You hear that a lot, and I think it's it's kind of easy to buy into that if you're just going off of like what's charting on like Billboard or that sort of thing. But at the same time, like if you look at listings for like different concerts that are coming through your town, like San Francisco, for example, there's always big rock shows coming through, and a lot of times they're sold out. A lot of times there's kind of like big package shows where they will put together like 3 or 4 bands, and that'll sell out like on a Monday night. So I think it's just a more selective audience.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, it's like the audience that wants to see live rock and wants to see unique new indie kind of rock. I think if you're an indie rock band, you're gonna find a place to play if you can play. But if you're like a cover band, playing Leonard Skinner and the Eagles, and maybe that's not going to work as heavy as but people want to see like modern, new, like progressive or metal, like death metal and punk. There's always room for punk. I think anybody that comes out with that kind of attitude and power, people get pulled into the charisma of that.
Yeah, people like to see, just a really energetic, band that's got, like you said, that has charisma and that has soul and that has,
it's authentic. It makes you want to, kind of bang your head like in old days. But you want to see a band just kind of rip through it like a Husker Du, or like even like Guns N' Roses. They were kind of had a real powerful edge, kind of like a modern Aerosmith. It's just like every time there's always going to be like a new Def Leppard or a new Aerosmith or a band that's really kicking it, that does like traditional rock. There's whether you're a 3-piece band doing like a Cream, or you're a punk band, or you're trying to emulate like the Who. If you have that kind of hard edge, I think you're always going to get through.
Yeah, and like you said, the rock and metal, there's a built-in audience for that. There's a rabid fan base for that. I don't know if that'll ever really go away. I think it'll, it's just not as popular as maybe it once was. But I don't know. Things seem to go in phases anyway. So who knows? Maybe 10 years from it'll be the biggest thing.
Well, there's a phase. I mean, the disco was supposed to be dead, but there's a place for disco.
I mean, and I like a lot of that old disco stuff. There's
well, I mean, it's interesting rhythms. I'm a big funk guy. So like James Brown and Parliament Funkadelic, and that stuff is the basis of hip hop. And it's like it was jazz and blues mixed with rock, and it created that kind of genre, and it's always being reused. All consistently, like Parliament Funkadelic is the base of most hip hop.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
sampled so many times by so many hip hop artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just that in the James Brown kind of grooves that's always going to be there. But, you know, seeing a band actually really play
Yeah.
that always is very inspiring to me. But
Yeah, I would love to see P Funk play.
yeah, or anybody that can get in that zone and be playing at that level, like Bernie Worrell and Bootsy, you know, playing like Georgie, like that is just a level of kind of mixing. What I loved about Parliament was in Funkadelic was they put like psychedelic rock
Right.
and Drexian rock into that kind of groove.
Right.
And you don't see a lot of bands doing that. I kind of miss that.
Yeah.
Because that's like it's a level of you know, work that you have to put into that to get those grooves.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You've got to be really, really tight with each other.
You can't have that Motown kind of Funk Brothers work ethic where you're kind of came from like a jazz background or a blues background, and you have the kind of dedication to do that, you know. But
yeah, Motown. What did you did you watch the whole Jennifer Lopez Motown tribute thing on the Grammys?
Yeah. I'm kind of a purist when it comes to that stuff.
I didn't,
so
I just know that people were, you know, just fucking going crazy over that. But
it's cool. I love Motown, but I'm kind of like I'm real old school, so I want to see like the Funk Brothers. I want to actually see the old guys do it. But it's cool for people to be inspired by it. You know, neo soul takes a lot of that stuff. But yeah. So I mean, the other question we get into is today. You know, what's your opinion on the streaming services? Is kind of like, and you know, streaming services allow a lot of bands to get out there. But what are your kind of pros and cons on it?
To be honest, I don't think that we've got enough exposure on streaming services for me to have like a really good opinion on them. I mean, we're on Spotify, and I think we're on a couple others that I can't think of right now. But you know, not too many people have come to us saying, "Oh, I found you guys through Spotify." I think that we just need to continue to just grow as a band first, and to really be able to see how.
Do you get more social interaction on other platforms like Instagram?
Yeah, we get more through like Instagram, Facebook. We get a lot of people through Bandcamp.
Yeah, Bandcamp's a good place.
Bandcamp is pretty cool. That's our bass player Jeremy is really into Bandcamp. I haven't messed around too much with it, but that kind of seems like the really kind of DIY group of people that are you know.
Well, it's kind of like SoundCloud. I mean, I'm a SoundCloud electronic artist. I'm big on there, but yeah, Bandcamp. I put about 10 albums on Bandcamp.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
but you know, it's a really cool place if you're an indie artist to be able to put something out, and you got a community that's into it.
Right, and
you know?
like a lot of bands, I've seen certain bands that are, you know, they're national or international touring acts, and they don't even have a website, but they have a Bandcamp. You know.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, it's like the Instagram, SoundCloud. It's a way to get out there without dealing with the labels. A lot of times these streaming services or social media are kind of like the new radio, or like college radio was to like bands like REM back in the day, when MTV actually played like music. And it was a combination of like MTV and college radio, and they launched bands like REM and Husker Du and Replacements and stuff like that. But now it seems like Instagram and Bandcamp and SoundCloud, places like that, Fanburst, they're all, you know, ways that indie bands get to their fans.
Yeah.
But it seems like you have to do the live shows, you have to have merch, you have to have fan interaction to really have a good presence.
You kind of have to be wonders, you know. That's something that we're aware of, but we're trying to really nail that, you know, just making sure that that there's always content, you know, on the different social media platforms, that everything kind of has like a certain aesthetic or look to it, you know, that the merch game is there, all that stuff, you know. And I'm not saying that we're perfect at that, because we're not, but you know, it just requires a lot of oversight, and yeah, that's just how you have to do it these days.
Do you find that did you try to sell merch when you do a show? Do you try? Yeah.
We definitely try to sell merch. Some nights are better than others, but we always make sure that we have shirts, we have stickers, pins, that whole deal. We do sell a decent amount of shirts. We're lucky. We have a good friend named Sam Pena, who's a super talented artist, and she has done the artwork for our albums and also our t-shirts. And we get complimented so much about her artwork. So
Well, that's good. It's kind of like go back to the Dead. The Grateful Dead used to have all these artists that were with them and do all this great art, and it's kind of like the synergy between, a graphic artist or the arts, visual, and sequential art and music. It kind of goes back to the '60s and the hippie kind of
right.
aesthetic. But it's cool to see you're linked up with an artist because that's kind of like a real classic thing to
Yeah,
do.
it's good to work with. It's been nice to work with the same person and kind of have that level of consistency. And like I said, she's just like incredibly talented. If your listeners are curious, I believe her Instagram is Ink Grinder, so they should check that out. She has some really awesome artwork.
Oh, we can put that on our
Yeah,
podcast.
definitely.
Yeah, because we'll put a link to your Spotify, or if you have other links you want to
Yep.
put on, just send me a little note because I can put all your Spotify links like on this podcast when we push it out. They'll be active on Apple and Radio Public, but for some reason, Spotify doesn't let the links be active, but people can grab them.
Yeah,
but
awesome. Yeah, she's a very talented artist, so everyone should check out her artwork.
Well, I saw now that there seems to be a trend where people can actually put out tape cassettes at low cost for their music, and that's the thing I've been seeing, like in New York.
I see that a lot.
Bands are putting those out when they come to shows.
That seems to be making a comeback, the cassette thing. I don't. It's funny because I see bands doing that at shows, but I also wonder how many people are actually listening to that because
I don't know if they're just buying them to have them because they're different.
Nostalgia is kind of like a big thing now. That's for some reason.
Well, it's cheaper than vinyl. Yeah. You can find an old Walkman real cheap. And it gives you something that is like, people are kind of like the next thing you see people doing 8-tracks or something.
I wonder if
those are harder to find machines that will actually play those without killing your tape.
Right. Yeah. I mean, vinyls come back, cassettes have come back. I wonder if CDs are going to make a return in like 5 or 10 years.
But CDs seem to work as merch in low volume. If you do the right package, if you do a package for a CD that has like a poster and it's not cheap plastic, people might buy that, at a show from you at a low volume.
We have a lot of CDs of our first album, and some shows we try to push that, and some people are just like, oh, I don't have a CD player. But this past show we did on Monday, we actually pushed a lot of CDs. I was surprised that like a ton of people were like, oh yeah, I still have a CD player, I still have a Walkman or whatever. So it was kind of interesting to hear that. But
yeah, because the one thing about the question I always ask is there's a lot of bands today that kind of focus on singles because it seems to be like a 1950s we're in a singles kind of market compared to like the late 60s where we were in an album oriented market. But typically like progressive rock bands or rock bands tend to want to have people listen to the whole album. But the way people listen to music today, it's hard for people to kind of get through a whole record. But the people who buy vinyl and actually listen to it go back into that. They'll actually listen to a whole record. And so the idea of having album oriented projects where people are actually, you want your fan to actually listen to the whole thing through. Have you thought about, like, when you do your music, do you try to package it as a full album that should be listened to together, or you focus just on the individual songs?
I think that does come together kind of a little bit later in the songwriting. Obviously the releases that we've done so far have been more focused on like an entire album. In fact, if you listen to the first album we did, it's kind of bookended. It starts off and ends pretty much the same way. So that's kind of cool. But you know, I like both. I like albums. I like sitting down like in a dark room and just like listening to an entire album from start to finish. But I also like singles, and I think that, you know, like you mentioned, the way it is today, it's definitely more singles driven, and that's something that we've talked about doing going forward. You know, just releasing a couple of songs at a time, and then maybe later on doing a full album. But you know, as much as I love, you know, full long play records, it's like you said, it's hard to get people to sit down and listen to the full thing. There's definitely an audience for that, but I
Yeah,
we're going to
yeah,
look into, you know, doing a little bit more of a singles driven approach in the future and see how that goes for us.
yeah. Because I've been kind of going both with, like, a lot of times, because I do concerts where, you know, I'll play like 50 minutes or something, and so everything I do is kind of based on the
Yeah,
concert idea. So there are like full concepts, even like concept albums and stuff. But you know, I actually put all the songs out as singles.
no,
You know, so then I get actually a lot of hits on my social media because I'm constantly putting out these singles that end up on longer
right,
projects that I use to play my live
right,
show. Um, but yeah, I mean, that it seems like it is kind of like back in the day, like James Brown and his band were putting out songs like every week in the
yeah,
50s.
yeah,
You know, and it seems like there are some hip hop artists that do that, you know, in collectives and, you know, underground bands and stuff that are putting out material at a really frenetic pace because their fans kind of, you know, are eating it
right.
up that way. So, you know, that there's different ways to get out there. It does seem like the hip hop genre is more album oriented
You
though.
think?
For some reason, the fans there are willing to listen to the whole
You
project.
think so?
Yeah, I've seen like with a lot of, you know, fans that like bands like
Uh,
Brockhampton and Odd Future. You know, they'll listen to those projects the whole way through.
yeah,
Um, but you know, those are specific types of bands that people are into
yeah.
that. But yeah, they seem to want to listen to it in that way in those genres compared to like more popular music is kind of like people are just putting playlists
Yeah,
together and stuff.
I
But
noticed that more like with, you know, '90s hip hop. You know, like, you know, it seemed like the album was a lot more important. You know, but now it seems like it's much more single oriented.
yeah, I mean, maybe like the Odd Future Collective is like Tyler the Creator. People seem to listen to his project all
Yeah,
the way through. Yeah, a guy like Earl Sweatshirt, people listen to his stuff
yeah,
all the way through. Guy like Frank Ocean,
right,
Blonde and Channel Orange were kind of like their album oriented
right,
albums.
right.
You know, they have that structure that's kind of classic album. Um, but you know, they're maybe not is what's in the top 20 of hip
Yeah,
hop, but more like the bottom 50,
yeah. I mean,
uh, which where I listen to most of the time.
yeah, and those are some still some pretty big names though within that genre. So
Yeah, but they don't always get to the
right,
top, but they seem to have like album oriented work, which is kind
yeah.
of cool. But yeah, so what do you feel about the current state of the music industry, given all these things we were talking about with like streaming and, you know, what do you think about? There's so many bands that don't want to be on a label anymore. You know, big bands like Radiohead and Wilco, they left their labels. You know, Pearl Jam left their
Right.
label. So what's your opinion on like what the music industry should be doing or not? You know, what you want them to do? And,
Oh God, that's a mountain of a question. um, I don't know. I don't think that it's necessarily as doom and gloom as a lot of people paint it out to be. I think that the good thing nowadays is that you can kind of do whatever the hell you want to do. You know, you can be an indie band and, you know, sell a ton of merch on tour, and you could make a living off of that. You know, it seems like there's a lot of different avenues now for being a successful musician. So I think that's cool. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's as like I said, doom and gloom as a lot of people portray. But
Yeah, I think what people maybe are missing, like used to be able to get, but only if you think about it, only few and far between would get a record
yeah,
contract where you get the advance, you'd be on the label, you're flying around in a jet. I mean, you get the Led Zeppelin. I mean, you're not gonna. How many of those bands got to be
right,
like Led Zeppelin? You know. And now today you have more
yeah,
bands that can actually go out and tour and last longer than a year.
right,
compared to like a label that said, well, if you don't make it on your first 2 records or 3 records, then you're off the label. Where an indie band could still be out around for like 10, 15 years with a small fan base that's actually, sustainable versus a record company trying to say, well, you got to hit 200,000, you got to hit 300,000 or we're going to drop you.
Right. Yeah. You can be in a band and you can make your recording at home using like a fairly modest setup and still get a really good quality sound, and you can upload that right to SoundCloud or whatever, and you can build a fan base off of that if enough people like your music. So yeah, there are still plenty of ways to become successful.
Yeah, I think that's why today we have a lot of artists out there able to actually continue to be artists. Where in the old model, bands would be like one-hit wonders, or they would kind of fade away. You get a band like a Big Star.
Yeah. There's like 10 bands back in the day. Now there's like 10 million. So
yeah. Big Star was a great band, but they never went anywhere. And then then now everybody realizes how great they were.
Sorry.
But based on the old system, it wouldn't work. But today, Big Star probably would have worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. Pretty much almost every person I know is in a band.
Yeah, well, where you are is kind of like where I live. I'm in New Hampshire, not a lot of bands. But New York and Boston, a lot of bands. But you guys probably have way more bands than we do.
Yeah, there's a lot here. But it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, even we haven't been around a long time by any stretch, but like, even bands that we played with like a year or two ago are just not around anymore. So many people start bands and then they get a few months deep, and then some drama happens or something, or they're not where they want to be, and then they just kind of say fuck it and they give up, and it's just
I think it's interesting because that's the one thing I always want. You get the people who are driven and they do it because they love music, and if you love music, you're probably not going to stop. But if you're trying to get somewhere else because of the music and you don't get there, then you might stop.
And then that I think that's just kind of a situation where I don't know. It's kind of easy to just be real hard on yourself and brutally just like just unnecessarily hard on yourself, or you can just kind of figure out what you need to improve on and then just go from there.
And I knew guys it's like if they couldn't play like Jimmy Page or Hendrix or Clapton, then they were done. If they couldn't get to that level, and then it's like, well, how do you get a Paul Westerberg? How do you get a Lou Reed? They get confident in what they can do.
That's true.
And then you get something that's unique because he's not trying to be Jimmy Page. Lou Reed's not trying to be Jimmy Page, but he made some brilliant stuff. And it's at a totally different level because he became comfortable with what he could do, and then he pushed it. But, some people who measure themselves at that kind of level, they got to match Jimmy Page. That's you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
on that.
Focus on what you're good at and just kind of, put every effort towards that, and maybe down the road you'll end up sounding like Jimmy Page or whatever. But for the time being, you should just kind of play to your strengths.
Well, you'll find something that is uniquely yours, and that's why I think is the genius in music. Because I listen to so many different things, from jazz to country to everything, and there's always something about an artist that really is, that comes out of nowhere, or just doing something that you don't expect. And I'm always looking for the stuff that's like unexpected. I'm looking for somebody that's trying to do something and be true to themselves, like a singer-songwriter. I always have a lot of appreciation for singer-songwriters because you get to see their complete vision, and that's like I always want to give artists that have that kind of vision a way to talk about their music.
Yeah, I mean, being a singer-songwriter, that's just like it's like just being naked.
Well, yeah, it's like reading a book. I find in music, when you talk to people who are creatives, that are singer-songwriters that have their own vision, it's kind of like reading
Yeah.
novels, because artists are deep when they get that way, and then and there's a lot of stuff you can pick up on in their work that is, it's very satisfying to listen to people who have that kind of vision, and I like to hear as many people doing that as possible. And that's why we have this show, to kind of give people, artists, a place to be able to talk about their
Yeah.
craft.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But
great. That's awesome that you do that. It's really interesting to hear, everyone's kind of different approach to how they, how they approach their craft, like you said, how they approach songwriting, how they approach, their lyrics, all of that. It's interesting how different everyone approaches it.
yeah, so when you write a song, does it come to you? Well, I guess every songwriter has a different way of doing things and may have multiple
Yeah.
techniques. Um, but like my particular technique is I kind of do like a stream of consciousness, kind of like a Dylan-esque kind of stream of consciousness, and just kind of go and do free flowing poetry, and then go back and edit after, and I'll do like a session, and just kind of go wherever the music is going to take me, and then refine it
Yeah.
later, and then bring it down to a more concise like song
Right.
pattern. But like, what's your like preferred way of doing it? Or you have multiple ways of
Mine
doing
is
it?
kind of similar to you, but I mean, if we're talking about lyrics, I never really sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write about this, because every time that I've tried that, it's never worked out. Like if I sit down and I say, oh, I'm gonna write about, I don't know, love, or I'm gonna write about like, going to the grocery store or something, I end up writing about something totally different. So
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of sit down and I kind of just start writing, and then once it's kind of apparent what I'm writing about, then I'll just kind of hone in on that. Sometimes if I just listen to like a rough recording of music that we have, if I listen to it over and over again, sometimes just certain phrases will pop out to me, and if it keeps just popping up in my head, then I'll just write that down and I'll kind of just work around that. But I don't really have like a really set strategy. I just kind of sit down and start writing, and then like I said, once an idea starts appearing, then I just kind of focus on that, and then when it comes time to like actually sing it, that's kind of the fun part, because that's when you can kind of figure out, you know,
How
yeah,
it's
what's
going to
gonna
work?
work, like
Yeah.
what words you can kind of bend and emphasize and that sort of thing.
Well, what's going to become the chorus and the hook and the refrain, or like how are you going to? Can you have your original idea, and then once you get the music in, it starts to change it.
Yeah,
What I've seen is like, especially if you write something by
yeah,
yourself, and then you get with the
yeah,
band, and then the drummer can totally change how you're
yeah.
going to do
Drummers,
something.
they're the worst.
But I think it's great because I'll have like something on a drum machine, like an
Yeah,
808, or running off like a Moog drum machine, and then have a real drummer come in, and it totally changes what I was going to
right.
do.
Yeah,
Because it's just like, okay, the real drummer is going to bring something that I'm not going to be able to
right.
do, and then it changes how I'm going to actually, orchestrate the song, or fit the lyrics in based on their playing. Even a bass player or a guitar players can kind of shift where you're going to put the chorus, or what you're going to do with the
Yeah,
melody, and it's always really
yeah. That's a
interesting.
that's a pretty humbling experience. Like when you have you have your grand vision in your head when you're in your room or you're in your bedroom or whatever. Like, oh, it's gonna sound like this, and these are the lyrics, and the guitar's gonna do this, and then you actually go into the rehearsal
Especially,
space, and you're like, oh, this kind of sounds like shit. Maybe I should.
yeah, you gotta
Yeah,
change it because it
yeah,
changes. Yeah, that's always like the thing when you collaborate, that the other people, as they kind of shift it. It kind of goes from being like the Pete Townsend demo to being a Roger Daltrey
yeah, yeah.
vision.
But it always seems to work out for the better, when
Yeah, the collaboration is
yeah,
awesome. Um, but when you're like a solo artist, then you kind of have to do a little harder
right,
work to kind of be more self-critical of your original thing. Because every artist, like, oh, my first vision on this is like, oh, this is
yeah,
great. But then you give it a couple of days, and you're like, oh
yeah.
no.
I do that all the time, just with little things, stuff that I haven't even like brought into the band, like just stuff that I write at home. Like I'm sitting down writing, and I'm like, oh, this is my masterpiece, and then I listen to it like 2 days later. I'm like, God, this sounds horrible.
Yeah, that's you give yourself the little like gut check.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, it's great that we have you on, Derek, and we're gonna push this out tonight, and we'll send you the links. And like I said, I don't know if you know, but we're on like 12 different platforms out on the net, including Spotify, Apple Music, Stitcher, Radio Public, many, many more. And so we'll give you some of the popular links. We'll send them to you, and you can push it out on your social media. We're going to also push this out on our blogger page, our Facebook page, and Twitter pages.
Awesome.
And we have a Spotify link that we can actually push up on our Instagram, and people can actually click on a highlight and actually listen to the whole podcast.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So we're going to push that, and then you can do that yourself as well with the links if you want to. But we're going to do that. Well, thank you for coming on. And if you have a new project in the future, we tend to have our guests come on a couple months later when they have new projects or new things they want to talk about. So we'll check with you guys, and if you have something you want to push, like a new album in 2019, let us know, and then we can talk about it.
Absolutely, I would love to do that. Thank you so much for having me. This was a real pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll be talking to you again. We'll send you those links later tonight, so you'll get them pretty shortly.
Thank you so much. Really great talking.
Okay. Bye. This is Bam Electric Ghost, and our latest album, The Flower That Blooms at Midnight in the Tomb, featuring the track Lollipop All Day Sucker, is available on all streaming services, including Amazon, Tidal, Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Red, and many, many more. So check us out. The Lollipop video is on YouTube. All these, that's the first track on the album. So check out Fam Electric Ghost. The Flower That Blooms at Midnight in the Tomb, available now on all streaming services. This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're working with Natural X, who is a distributor and manufacturer of CBD oil. Now, you shouldn't settle for inferior CBD oil. Natural X is not an inferior CBD oil. It is the superior CBD oil. There are no additive chemicals. It's available in all 50 states. It's water soluble. It's high absorbing, full spectrum CBD with terpenes. Now, the difference between THC and CBD, you might not know. So THC is a psychoactive portion of cannabis and is commonly found in marijuana in higher amounts and is very low, if any, in the hemp plant. CBD is a cannabinoid devoid of psychoactive effect. In other words, you can't get high from CBD. After THC, CBD is by far the most studied natural cannabinoid and is gaining popularity faster than THC because of its healthy properties without drug side effects attached to it. So if you click on the link that we're going to provide in a couple minutes, you'd be able to get this really good CBD. So why would you take Natural X CBD? Well, it's the most stable, longest lasting, highest absorbing CBD. It's fast. It's got 15-minute absorption rather than slow 60 to 90-minute peaks. It's the highest absorption rate in the industry. It's real CBD oil, not liposomes or nanoparticles. It's got a super long shelf life, can store for 2 years, no need for refrigeration. It's made from hemp, not marijuana. It's clean, healthy, organic hemp, sourced from the best farms. It's full spectrum, top quality hemp CBD, not cheap CBD isolates. Enjoy the healthy entourage effects of full spectrum CBD oil. It's not addictive, and there's no psychedelic drug effects. It's available, as we said, in all 50 states. Easy to use, to swallow a little every day. Tastes great, no disgusting, oily, bitter taste. Best value in hemp CBD, you get more usable CBD for your money. You save money by purchasing today with the special pricing from Natural X. It's proudly made in the USA, and there are no worries because you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you click our link, we've got a bit.ly link to make it easier for you. So the link that you use to be able to purchase this is bit.ly/2SV small b capital H V So let's do that again. It's bit.ly/2, capital S, capital V, lowercase b, capital H, lowercase b, lowercase w. And we'll do that once more. It's bit.ly/2S, capital V, lowercase b, capital H, lowercase v, w. Now, this link is also on the podcast, so if you can't get it from here, just look at the podcast. You'll see the link there, and you can just click on it. And I hope you enjoy this product, and we'll talk to you again. Keep on listening to the Family Electric Go Show, because we talk about all kinds of things, and you'll be able to get information about all types of products like this product from Natural X, their Natural X CBD. Thank you.